Oh god, the wind, bro. The wind! Oh my god, the wind is gonna be unbearable because my new bed setup sucks. I hate it. Ugh. Anyways. Greeting. Hi, Ink. Alright, hi, what's up? Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of shit, yeah. I was just, like, doing stuff here. Nothing. I don't know. More art. Yes. Fucking. Yikes. Hi. Hello, Ink. How are you? I. I did saw what you saw. I did saw what you said, Bingus. You can't escape me. I want Ink to be here, but the guy is sick, and I don't. I feel bad for the poor boy. What's up, Cameron? Okay. Let me just, Figaro, Figaro, Figaro. Jesus Christ, KJ. Figaro, Figaro, Figaro. La-di-da. Alright, see you later, Argo. What's good today, you gay fucks? Nothing much. Aside from stupid shit, as the usual. Okay, hold on. Sorry, I'm talking to my goofball right here. How long is this going to take? Fine. Okay. That one. Let me just there we go. Fucking la di da da da. What the fuck? Why is my? There we go. Okay. You may be wondering, Zeph, the fuck are you gonna do again? Just gonna do more stupid shit, alright? Leave me alone. I do stupid shit. And anyway. Zeph, you gotta take the remains of Ink's mustache and tape it back onto his face. Trust. I can't do that. Motherfucker, that was the same shit that motherfucker. It's the same sketches that I did. It's the same doodles that I did like a day ago. What the hell is that? Oh god, it was loud.
A popular video game your children may have come across. It is free, it is online, and it allows kids
Alright.
We have to warn you, these images
Hi,
are
son.
pretty disturbing.
Follow the guide arrows.
Does your brain malfunction when you see ink? Yes.
This is not for kids. This is adult entertainment.
Because I love...
Video games first started as a niche hobby, uncommon to the general
Because I
public.
love
Now
my
there are more
baby.
than 3 billion gamers in the world, almost half of the human population. You probably grew up playing video games at an
Historical
early age, but
geology right
playing
now.
games
Have
isn't
fun.
always a positive experience. Sometimes they can give you nightmares, or in some situations leave you scarred for life. Today we'll be looking at kids games that are too disturbing for kids, and as we go deeper, we'll uncover just
That's
how
awesome.
dark video games can really get. As always, I hope you guys have an absolutely marvelous week. The Cursed Baby Panda Game. The panda is one of the cutest animals in the world, which also happens to be the mascot of a YouTube channel for kids, Baby Bus. In their description, Baby Bus provides intelligent early childhood educational content for kids up to 6. But what's interesting about Baby Bus is how big it really is. On YouTube, Baby Bus has over 130 million subscribers across multiple channels. Outside of YouTube, Baby Bus also makes a lot of mobile games targeting children, one of them being Baby Panda Dental Care. Released on April 27th, 2020 on the Google Play Store, Baby Panda Dental Care has over 10
You can't
million
ask us if we're
downloads.
gay
The
when
game
you're
is
a girl
rated
with a
for a
boyfriend.
3-year-old
So I
audience
can
and
still
allows
be
players
gay
to step
and
into
have
the
a
role of
boyfriend. What do you
dentist.
want about?
All patients in the game are cute animals who look for you to fix their teeth. The game is really innocent. But Baby Panda Dental Care wasn't always like this. In 2017, Chick World, another kids mobile game developer, released their own version of Baby Panda Dental Care. It had the same name as Baby Bus's game and similar gameplay, but it looks like this. This version of the game has highly unsettling visuals. There's only one patient, a panda with its dirty yet detailed teeth. The end result is an Uncanny Valley-like experience. The Uncanny Valley is used to describe an uncomfortable feeling that we get when something feels human, but it isn't. The panda you meet in the game doesn't look anything like a real panda. It has a mouth that looks human, and its eyes are wide open. Throughout the operation, the panda stares at you without blinking. It already feels creepy enough for adults, so for kids, it would be even worse. In 2019, Chick World's Baby Panda Dental Care was removed from the Play Store, but by then, it already had over 10,000 installs. The mobile game may be gone, but the browser version can still be played today, rebranded as Cute Panda Dentist Care. These next games, inspired by Disney, are surprisingly not appropriate for a younger Disney-loving audience. The dark influence of Frozen. Making content for kids comes with a lot of restrictions, but do it properly and you'll hit the lottery. Look no further than Disney. Both Frozen 1 and 2 ranked in the top 5 highest grossing animated films of all time. From the songs to the merchandise, Frozen is a franchise that shaped the childhood of millions across the world. So many brands took advantage of this and created hundreds of thousands of Frozen merch. The catch, most of them are fake, but these unlicensed goods aren't just physical, they're digital too. Fake Frozen games are everywhere. This is just one example, Snow Queen flying knife. The goal of this game is to toss knives at targets that appear on a rotating wooden circle. But the circle also has Hans, the villain from the first Frozen movie, strapped onto it. Hitting Hans results in, well, let's just say, really graphic imagery and screaming. But that's not even scratching the surface of how weird these fake Frozen games can get. A lot of these games put players in the role of a surgeon, operating on Frozen characters in a gruesome fashion. Elsa Cesarean Birth is a game where you have to help Elsa give birth by cutting to deliver the baby. On top of the gore, what makes this game even more disturbing for kids is that it's possible to lose the game, suggesting that if you fail, it's possible that the baby or Elsa herself didn't make it. Other games that deal with the health of Frozen characters include Baby Elsa Spinal Surgery, Frozen Anna Brain Surgery, and Olaf Eye Care. A lot of kids love the Frozen characters, so showing them with serious injuries can leave them pretty uncomfortable. But some of these fake Frozen games are much worse, but we can't talk about those ones or YouTube would be furious. Frozen isn't the only franchise with tons of problematic kids content online, but it is the biggest. On YouTube, there was the Elsagate incident. Hundreds of thousands of YouTube kids videos were discovered as being very inappropriate for kids. But unlike Elsagate, it doesn't seem like these fake Frozen games will be getting banned anytime soon. Yet in the world of disturbing kids games, it's not always gore that makes it problematic. Sometimes just the style of the game itself is enough to give kids nightmares. The truth behind Majora's Mask. For kids growing up in the early 90s, the console war they'll remember was fought by Sega and Nintendo. But by the end of it, Nintendo won. What made Nintendo different from competitors was its family-friendly image. Nintendo's marketing strategy is the reason why we have huge gaming franchises like The Legend of Zelda. Their popularity is largely thanks to how Nintendo catered their games to a younger audience. But even then, there are some games from Nintendo that players find dark. In the Legend of Zelda series, one of the old classics that still gets discussed to this day is Majora's Mask. Considered by many to be the creepiest Zelda game, Majora's Mask haunted the dreams of a lot of its players. But why? To understand why Majora's Mask was so chilling, you have to understand what it was like when the game first came out. The previous entry in the franchise, Ocarina of Time, brought the series into 3D for the first time and became one of the greatest video games of the decade.
But it's still funny.
It has some of the most iconic music in all of gaming. And at the time, it flawlessly captured the grandiose feeling of
See you
adventure.
later, Fruity.
Ocarina of Time influenced the path of the entire medium of video games.
To follow up on this historic achievement, Eiji Aonuma, the lead designer of the Zelda games, was given an impossible task. He had to develop the sequel to Ocarina of Time within a year. The stress of this deadline gave him nightmares. According to an interview, it was these nightmares that inspired the dark elements of Majora's Mask. And on April 27, 2000, the game was finally released for the Nintendo 64. So from Link being a triumphant hero in Ocarina of Time, how does Majora's Mask kick things off? With Link getting robbed and being transformed into a plant-like creature. Right off the bat, the game has a pretty grim tone, and to make matters worse, there is a time limit that plays an important role in the game.
It deals with some pretty dark stuff, especially at its time of release and for a Zelda game. I mean, you have 3 days to save Termina, or everyone gets crushed by a moon that's inching ever closer by the second.
For a lot of kids who didn't know what they were doing, they were greeted by this bad ending of the moon destroying everything. The moon itself is the stuff of nightmares, with an evil face always looking down at the player. The game's depressing atmosphere is thanks to the fact that its world is ending in 3 days. Some characters in Majora's Mask either live in denial or in complete hopelessness. For example, the swordsman at the school says he's not scared of the falling moon and thinks he can cut it into pieces. But in the final 6 hours before the moon falls, if you go to the school, the swordsman barricades himself in a hidden room curled up crying, terrified of what's to come. If you beat the game by saving the world, no matter what you do, there is no happy ending. In the end credits, most of the residents of Termina are celebrating, except the Deku Butler, one of the characters you meet in the game. The game's good ending always shows him mourning the loss of his son. It's grim moments like this throughout the game that fills the player with a sense of emptiness. In the end, Majora's Mask was a game born from the nightmares of its creator and brought to life. Fast forward 20 years later, and the game is still being analyzed
Baby
by
Elagos's
YouTubers
eyes
to
are
this
so
day. Majora's Mask
lovely.
also inspired Ben Drowned,
Creepy.
one of the most popular internet horror stories from the mid-2000s. Surprisingly, Majora's Mask isn't the only Nintendo game inspired by its creator's experiences. The game in our next chapter turns its creator's childhood memories into pure nightmares. The game based on a scarred childhood. While Majora's Mask explores a darker, more mystical world, let's shift gears to something more grounded in reality. This video sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is a vehicle combat MMO game with more than 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships to choose from. These vehicles are legit very realistic. The game has beautiful graphics and sound effects to immerse you in the experience. So when I was a kid, I wanted to become a fighter pilot and spent hours researching fighter jets. I can tell you that War Thunder pays attention to detail. They have a sophisticated vehicle damage model with every vehicle broken down into its specific parts like the engine and fuel tank. And the craziest part to me is the damage X-ray. When you get hit, vehicles suffer damage to their components and the crew inside. Play War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox now by using my link in the pinned comment or description. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months get a massive bonus pack. That includes premium vehicles, the Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. To celebrate the new year 2024, all players can, until the end of January, also claim 3 exclusive Gaijin snail decals to decorate your vehicles. While The Legend of Zelda is a household name at this point, Earthbound doesn't exactly have the same recognition. Released on June 5th, 1995, Earthbound, a traditional Japanese role-playing game, was brought to the Super Nintendo. In Earthbound, you control 4 kids who go on an adventure to save the world. The game looks innocent enough with its colorful environments and quirky humor, but it also has dark moments. Underneath Earthbound's innocent appearance are creepy sequences scattered throughout the game. Early on in the game, you'll come across Happy Happy Village. This town is home to the Happy Happiest, a cult whose members look like certain cult members in real life. Later on in the game, you arrive at a location called Moo. Here, one of your party members, named Pooh, have to undergo training by meditating. During the meditation, an ominous face will descend on Pooh, engulfing him. All this happens while a dark ambient track plays in the background. The face will then ask your permission to break Pooh's legs and remove his arms, among other disfiguring acts. Selecting no will cause the player to fail, and they'd have to repeat the meditation from the beginning. Even though it's just text-based, it's pretty chilling, especially for a younger player. It's even more twisted when you remember that Pooh is slightly younger than Ness, who is just 13. But the scene doesn't compare to the terror that is Gygus, the game's final boss. The fight against Gygus is unlike anything gaming has seen before. It doesn't have hype music or a grand stage, just a nightmarish background with distorted sound effects. The fight is divided into 5 stages, each filling the player's soul with dread. What makes this fight so chilling is the image of Gygus itself, which is thought to be based on an unborn child inside the mother's womb. While this theory is later proven to be false, what a lot of Earthbound players didn't know is that the game is based on a childhood experience that scarred its creator, Shigesato Itoi.
When he was a child, Itoi went to a movie to catch a flick with some friends, when unfortunately he walked into the wrong theater. He mistook this one love scene between 2 characters to be a romantic one, but in reality it was, well, something not so consensual and advertiser friendly, if you know what I mean.
This moment changed Itoi forever. Later on, as an adult, Itoi drew on the loss of his innocence as inspiration for making Earthbound. While the game is remembered today as a cult classic, it didn't change the fact that it was a deeply disturbing game for kids. And for the developers in our next chapter, their goal isn't to express themselves artistically. Sometimes the goal is to spread propaganda even at the expense of kids. PETA's disturbing propaganda. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA, is an animal rights group with an interesting history. Online, you can find hate for the organization almost everywhere. PETA is known for its outlandish publicity stunt. You might not know this, but surprisingly, they've also made a few video games. A lot of these games are parodies of beloved Nintendo titles. They're free and can be played on PETA's website. But unlike the Nintendo games that they're based on, PETA's versions aren't very kid-friendly. Pokemon Black and Blue is a good example of this. The game's cover art shows Pikachu and other Pokemon Pokemon injured. The player versus player combat is similar to Nintendo Pokemon games, but very short, with only 4 fights in total. But after the first fight, Nurse Joy, the nurse in all the Pokemon games, will appear to give you a treasure chest. Choosing to accept the treasure chest will open a new tab that plays a video.
That's a pig, Luke! Alright, we're not playing that. That's... Oh... Okay, so nothing is worse than getting a shock video. Oh, essentially what you have is a shock video here, right?
Yeah.
And then decorating that in a children's video game.
Yeah.
And using that as a mechanism to show and shock people.
Pretty bad.
To try and push off your propaganda. That is f***ed up.
PETA repeats this formula in a lot of their parody games. In their second Pokemon parody game, Pokemon Red, White, and Blue, you fight against McDonald's characters. After the first fight, you'll be asked if you want to open a treasure chest, which takes you to an age-restricted video. Besides the video, the gameplay of both Pokemon games isn't too disturbing, but the same can't be said for PETA's Cooking Mama parody game. The original Cooking Mama game is a series of cooking simulators made up of a lot of cute minigames. PETA's version has you preparing a turkey for Thanksgiving. The game shows a lot of blood and internal organs, and like the Pokemon parodies, it's also linked to an external video.
Cooking Mama's audience,
He would immediately start
obviously
over apologizing.
Kids, and they very easily could stumble upon this game, and they could just as easily get to the point in this game and then get scarred by this video.
Both Cooking Mama's developer and Nintendo have responded to PETA's versions of their games and decided not to take any legal action against them. The twisted use of propaganda in these children's games disturbed some kids, but in our next game, even adults were terrified about it too. The scariest arcade game ever. Going to the arcade is usually a fun experience for the whole family. With all kinds of genres, there's always a game for everyone. Well, most of the time. Unlike our previous entries, which relied on gore or a creepy atmosphere, this arcade game has gained a legendary reputation for the pure, unfiltered terror it creates. Sinistar.
A game many of you might not have even heard of, yet it still managed to scare the life out of countless children and even adults back in the day.
Created by Williams Electronics in 1983, Sinistar is a game where you pilot a spaceship from a bird's eye view. It was revolutionary for being the first sit-down arcade game to have stereo sound. The immersive audio gave it the feeling of sitting inside a cockpit, and thanks to this new technology at the time, arcade goers were blown away by the experience. At first, there's nothing scary about the game at all. You control your ship with a joystick, firing your laser at things while trying not to get hit. But as you keep playing, you'll hear something.
Before I can see the monster, I can hear him in what must be the most frightening introduction of any character in gaming history.
Just the mere thought of this voice would give me a quiver in my liver, and I would not be able to sleep for days.
Beware, coward. Run, coward.
That was the voice of the game's boss, Sinistar. All of Sinistar's lines were recorded by Chicago DJ John Dormus, except for one line. Sinistar's iconic scream was a lion's roar recorded from a zoo. This was the roar that struck fears in the hearts of countless children back in the 80s. But it wasn't just the voice. Sinistar is one big monstrous face that relentlessly chases the player down. Your spaceship's attacks do not work on Sinistar, and the only way to beat it is to collect the crystals. These crystals turn into weapons called Cinnabombs, which is the boss's only weakness. The game never gave clear instructions on this mechanic, so for a lot of kids playing this back in the day, the sudden appearance of this unbeatable force of nature made their blood run cold. This was also before the internet was a thing, so most players never figured out how to beat Sinistar. Those who do defeat Sinistar will be shocked to learn that he keeps coming back. The game's difficulty and its terrifying reputation ended up costing the developer Williams Electronics. Sinistar did not become a commercial success when it first launched, but decades later, the arcade game now has a huge cult following as a collector's piece. Sinistar is a blast from the past for many adults today. The game's amazing use of sound set the trend for many horror games today. But sometimes when a business strategy doesn't work, you have to try out new trends that run an entirely different form of inappropriate content. The game where you choose your own story. Episode is a free-to-play visual novel-style game where players can read interactive short stories. By choosing certain options, they can affect how the story plays out. But what separates Episode from a lot of other visual novel mobile games is its user-generated content, which is in-game content that its users create themselves. The top user-submitted stories even earn their creators money. With over 12 million creators, a lot of them would do anything they can to get clicks. This leads to a lot of questionable content on Episode.
If you go to the App Store, Episode is rated 12+, but some of the stories on the app are just not appropriate. I would be scared to read them as a 12-year-old if that
But it isn't just the users who are coming up with the inappropriate content for the game. Episode itself has a reputation for its weird ads that are not suitable for younger audiences. These ads usually show suggestive scenarios. Episode often advertises its games through other kids' mobile games. Because of this, a lot of kids were exposed to Episode's indecent ads even before getting to play a second of the game. This drew a very angry reaction from parents, since this is how some kids were introduced to the game. So how does Episode make money? Like a lot of other free-to-play games, Episode uses an energy system, which is the type of currency for the game. Players spend energy to read more content. Once your energy runs out, you can either wait for more or buy energy through the app. But for Episode, their monetization gets a lot worse. Some dialogue options are locked behind a paywall. It doesn't matter how long you wait, the only way to explore these options is by paying with premium currency. Often, this content tends to be the more steamy option, if you know what I mean. So on top of being marketed towards kids, Episode tries to exploit their curiosity and make them hooked on adult content they shouldn't even be consuming. From its ads to its stories, Episode has an entire ecosystem designed to profit off the undiscovered desires of its young audience. But as if suggestive animated content isn't dark already, this next game takes it one step further. A game based on a disturbing folklore. Not all games are created for the sake of enjoyment. Take, for example, the game Cosmology of Kyoto, an educational PC game released in Japan back in 1993 and North America a year later. Even though it had glowing reviews, the game didn't do well commercially. Cosmology of Kyoto barely had any players, but there were still some kids who stumbled across the game only to get scarred from the experience. Over the years, Cosmology of Kyoto gained a cult following because of just how eerie it was. It's even Guillermo del Toro's favorite game, director of famous films like Hellboy. But just what is it that makes Cosmology of Kyoto so unsettling? To answer that, we have to travel back in time to the Heian period in Japan at around the year 1000. This is when the game takes place, and right off the start you can feel that something's off.
The illustrations are all gorgeous, with a muted color palette and deep shadows, giving it a dark and creepy edge. The sky in the background and the empty, eerie streets really give this game a forlorn and foreboding feel.
Cosmology of Kyoto doesn't have a clear goal. You can go anywhere you want around the ancient capital of Kyoto, meeting various people and even demons. Depending on how you act in these scenes, your karma will change. It determines which Buddhist hell your character is sent to when you're defeated. This is what terrified kids who played the game back in the day. Most of these hell scenes show your character being tortured by monsters, and depending on which hell you end up in, the scenes can be stomach-turning. Once you leave hell, your character will reincarnate into a different person. Sometimes you'd even reincarnate as a dog. Unfortunately, there's a lot of encounters in the game that can send your character to hell, but if that wasn't inappropriate enough, there's gameplay showing characters exposed. But even with its gruesome imagery, Cosmology of Kyoto can be educational. Every single person you meet in the game is based on real-life accounts or folklore, and you can read up on these details through the game's reference menu.
It's like having an encyclopedia of ancient Kyoto and Japanese history and folklore at your fingertips.
Violence and indecent content are captured through Cosmology of Kyoto's unique art style. Others like taking a more real-life approach to video games, making them feel uncanny. The uncanny valley of full-motion video games. 1993 was the year that changed video games forever. Games were starting to become more mainstream, and the public was getting worried. Controversial games like Mortal Kombat caused the US Senate to create the ESRB, which is in charge of age-rating games. But Mortal Kombat's violence wasn't the only thing that politicians debated about back then. Another title that was brought up in the congressional hearings was Night Trap.
The second game is Night Trap, which is a game set in a sorority house. The object is to keep hooded men from the young woman from a hook.
Night Trap is an FMV game, which is short for full motion video game. The game's graphics uses real-life footage of actors, making it an interactive movie of sorts. Because of how realistic the game looked, a lot of people were concerned that the violence that happened on screen was too much for kids. But looking back, the only realistic thing about Night Trap was the fact that it used real people. The game's acting is poor and it was designed to be exaggerated. Most players didn't take it seriously.
Night Trap, the most infamous FMV game of all, which had terrible story, acting, sets, lighting, costumes, special
I
effects,
don't really want to
and
make ships
boring
canon.
gameplay.
But that didn't
I
stop
just want to
politicians from
do
using Night Trap as fuel to
I don't really want to
criticize
make
video
ships
games.
canon.
The game
I
was
just
hardly the
I
most
just like it.
problematic FMV title
There's like
at the
different
time.
timelines
Instead,
of other
there was
ships.
another
and I like
FMV
that.
game that flew under the politicians' radar. A game so dark it got banned in
I wanna
multiple
see more Oscar
countries.
and
That game is
Aftermath.
Phantasmagoria. Released on August 24th, 1995 for the PC, the game puts players in the shoes of a writer who has to survive inside a mysterious mansion. Unlike Night Trap, Phantasmagoria's acting was far more realistic. It's a horror game with multiple bad endings. Not only were there a lot of brutal scenes in the game, but there was even one that involved a non-consensual act. Even though the game is completely unsuitable for kids, that didn't stop many of them from playing it. The game's creator, Roberta Williams, felt that Phantasmagoria was unfairly targeted by the media. According to her, it's because at the time,
I am kind of close to the mic. What are you talking about? Hello? Hello? There. Dude, I'm not even joking. I have my mic turned up.
many people thought of computer games as children's entertainment. The game ended up haunting the dreams of a lot of kids. Phantasmagoria was so controversial that multiple organizations called for a boycott of the game. Even after all that, the game was a commercial success.
Of course, the controversy worked its magic, and the game went on to sell over 1 million copies.
Reading controversy is something the games in our next chapter do very well. But unlike Phantasmagoria, these games weren't made to make money. They were made to offend as many people as possible, even the victims of real-life tragedies. Newground's Darkest Games. On December 31st, 2020, Adobe Flash Player, which was a program used for many
Flash games are an untethered art form where creators are rarely beholden to the demands of publishers, distributors, customers, or anyone who might restrict what makes them. You noticed right away I ended that intro with 5 of the most rather than the top 5. Starting off at number 5 with a game that wasn't recreating any specific event. We had Kindergarten Code.
I'll be drawing that later. Dingus, hold on. He got separated from Koi, poor baby.
As becomes a bit of a norm in this video, this one was made by an 18-year-old trying to leave their mark and make a name for themselves with something intentionally controversial. Fast forward to 2012, a full decade later. In the wake of the Sandy Hook school shootings, the NRA blamed violent video games for the uptick. Their executive vice president, William LaPierre, specifically cited the usual suspects of Grand Theft Auto and Mortal Kombat, as well as popular games like Bulletstorm and Splatterhouse. And in a wildly unexpected move, he directly drew attention to a little-known Flash game.
And here's one. It's called Kindergarten Cures. It's been online for 10 years.
Pardon the pun, but LaPierre tried to use this as some sort of smoking gun. That the buried existence of this game revealed a dirty little truth in the industry and the culture.
you believe this baby is gonna turn into a sassy cup that don't know when to quit? Which one?
Even before the headline-worthy 2012 column, it was first quietly removed from
Which baby?
in 2008 following another school shooting in Finland, but it didn't gain much additional attention at that time. Overall, I categorize this one as a weaker controversy. While it made headlines, it didn't seem like anyone other than Wayne Lapierre actually cared.
Oh, hi, Cassie. Fancy seeing you here. Hope you stay. Hope you stay longer.
It has never left, but at least it is no longer the only thing these people point to. Look at a case like lawyer Jack Thompson, an infamous anti-video games activist who in 2008 was disbarred and no longer allowed to practice law, with the Florida Supreme Court determining that his filings were repetitious, frivolous, and insulting to the integrity of the court. If Florida is calling your opinions outdated, you know you're on the wrong side of the debate.
What do you mean?
Here this guy
Both of the twins are sassy. Which one? Can Ellie drive? No, Ellie Gus does not know how to drive.
dead blaming guns for gun violence, so they resorted to blaming a relatively unknown browser game made 10 years earlier. The use of such an obvious scapegoat was ludicrous and almost feels more controversial than the game itself. Number 4. Back in April 2007, creator C-Man released the Torture game, supposedly being inspired by some of Ed McMillan's Dead Baby games that were popular at the time. C-Man was also 18 at the time and living in South Africa. The Torture game is extra cartoony with a few simple options, some of which can still give you a bit of the heebie-jeebies. Think of interactive buddy, but instead of bashing up this cute little ball man, you are instead violently inflicting pain upon an actual person. There is no objective, only pain. You can dunk the androgynous human in acid, poke them with a knife, run a big spear through them, or scrape them up with a razor. The last one, especially gross if you want. However, it's made notably less gross.
You're fine, Pip.
Emulated versions of the game you may encounter online now.
Oh, that's awesome, Cassie.
Is replaced with this white square. Now, it's a lot less offensive when you're essentially giving a sheet of paper a cut. Really, I think anybody can get on board with that sort of paper-cutting revenge concept. That original game never made much of a splash. It wasn't until 1 year later, in May 2008, when the Torture Game 2 was released. Then the controversy began. The sequel took on a notably more realistic art style and added many new options. Even simply flicking and dragging the ragdoll person shows off the more advanced physics, becoming even more twisted as soon as you start placing nails to hold things in place, with any damage inflicted remaining after. One eerie quality is that this person never screams or reacts to anything we're doing. I think that would have been a very different game, one that read as something more sadistic, and maybe would have warranted the attention it received. I really can't show a lot of this game because I suspect much of the gore and violent imagery likely exceeds YouTube's tolerable limits. So what if we just replace the blood with some blueberry juice? That might do the trick. Nothing upsetting about that, eh? Each tool has a list of ways you can make use of it. Some of them are actually pretty damn impressive feats of programming, like the physics of attaching things with a rope, then shortening and lengthening the rope while it's attached. That simple tool is the sort of thing that would normally be
Yes, Cassie, yes. Canon.
while others, like the razor, are much more sickening. Layers of skin and tissue were added to the character, meaning that every different way you torture this man reveals varying amounts and depths of blood and viscera. I mean, blueberry juice and jam. Honestly, things like the chainsaw are pretty cool. It's complex to make the game in a way where anything can be cut nearly anywhere with proper physics. The way it all goes limb
No, none of them do. Hello, Moonlight.
Linda actually reached out to CD to get a developer perspective. Some standout quotes include, "I never thought of it as a stress relief. The only thing I meant it to be was something simple, pointless, meant only for entertainment. Seaman had no interest in becoming an actual game developer, and shared, I don't mind people disliking my game, but some of them are too serious about something so simple and basically meaningless." As additional sites like Game Politics, Discover Magazine, and more began to pick it up, they simply exposed the game to a greater as with almost all games on this list, the Strize Andamant was enforced. For anyone unfamiliar, the Strize Andamant is a novel named after Barbara.
That's what they sounded like when they were kids. No thoughts in those heads. Literally. They had no brain cells when they were kids. Look at them. It's just Hello, Mocha.
Isn't all bad, as some users actually made it a personal challenge to create something beautiful within the confines of the game, painting scenes through the violence of the game to create entirely original pieces like these. So while this game garnered a lot of media attention, the controversy maybe wasn't that deep. It offended everyone who you would expect it would offend, and kind of fizzled out from there. Number 3. The back end of this list ramps things up a bit. The remaining 3 in this list earn their controversies by being directly linked to real people and events. Anita Sarkeesian is a feminist media critic and public speaker, most well known for founding Feminist Frequency, which commentates on portrayals of women in pop culture. Anita had launched a Kickstarter campaign to fund a series of videos examining gender tropes in video games. That sounds like a perfectly legitimate concept for a video series. Women are often underrepresented in video games, or when they are present, are often reduced to tropes or presented through a misogynistic lens. That's unfortunately true in just about any medium, and games are far from being an exception.
I don't know how you're able to make perfect baby sounds, but you get a star for that. What the fuck? Listen, guys, they're talking. Okay, listen, it's just fine. They're just talking. It's okay. saw it, KJ. Would Elgas be embarrassed of his baby photos? Yeah, he would be.
Just to quickly dispel the notion that everyone dislikes her simply for speaking her mind. It's largely instead that she has bad, unsupported opinions and often factually incorrect arguments. Launching her campaign started a bit of a war, with haters attempting to hack her accounts, flooding her social media pages with threats of rape and death, disparaging her anywhere they could. Even if people do dislike her work, this was an abhorrent reaction that nobody deserves. That vicious hate drew new eyes, allowing supporters to find her campaign and boost it from its $6,000 goal all the way up to just shy of $160,000. That's 2,648% of the intended goal. While I'm sure those threats were not easy for Anita to bear, she appears to have gotten the last laugh in that sense. In the wake of this hate wave, about 3 weeks after the Kickstarter that started it all had ended, we saw the release of Beat Up Anita Sarkeesian. For a bit of context, back in the earliest days of Newgrounds, some of the most common and most popular games came from the Assassin series. These were small, widget-like games where players could inflict pain upon just about any celebrity or fictional character you could imagine. It was a trend that quickly grew beyond the official releases, spawning many fan contributions featuring the likes of Britney Spears, Madonna, the Backstreet Boys, the Taco Bell dog, Jigglypuff, Furby, and on and on. Tom Folk described the Assassin series and its fan-made clones as the backbone of Newgrounds in those early days, with fans tuning in regularly to see who was on the chopping block next. The very first of these, coming directly from Tom, were made strictly through limited HTML programming, then JavaScript, and finally upgrading to Flash. I want to do a history video on that series someday, as it's a fascinating relic of the early internet and Newgrounds specifically, because it dates back so far. So much of it isn't readily available again. So I'd only do that video to get a
Hold on.
as many of those files as possible. Anywho, back on topic, Beat Up Anita Sarkeesian was
He still does that to this very day, Cameron.
July 2012. Either times have changed and people are less tolerant of this sort of casual violence. Maybe it's just easier than ever to
I'm gonna kill you, Baku. Anyway.
therefore less likely for them to go unnoticed. Perhaps it read as the creator
Okay, hold on, sorry. There we go.
realistic approach. Regardless of why, within only a day, it had been picked up by news outlets like Kotaku, The New Statesman,
Yes, Cassie. What am I drawing, Bunny? I'm just drawing babies.
own flood of hate and being axed off of Newgrounds. I reached out to Tom Falk simply to make sure I had that timeline correct, as it appeared to have spun out so quickly. He shared it was published on Newgrounds and immediately had an article on Kotaku that same afternoon, which made me paranoid the whole thing was a plant to generate publicity at Newgrounds' expense. Like, Newgrounds was an easy scapegoat to both generate outrage on Anita's behalf
later, KJ.
Activist Stephanie Guthrie decided to seek out the creator of the game for an interview. She quickly and easily found Ben Bendel Spur, using the same pseudonym on Newgrounds and Twitter, then openly blasting him. While many supported her quest to get in touch with Ben and have him answer for the creation of this game, others took it upon themselves to fight Bendelin's battle for him, thus sparking a whole new harassment campaign now against Stephanie. To me, she perhaps shares some blame for feeding the trolls and for approaching this as aggressively as she did, with the hate and insults now pouring in from both sides. Although I'm confident anything slung her way would have been far nastier than anyone deserved. This went so far that Guthrie and a man, Gregory Allen Elliott, got so heated in their debates that it eventually went to court, with the final verdict of that being that Gregory was innocent. There are reports that Bendelin was fired from his job after this and hadn't been able to find full-time employment for quite some time after. I never found any real confirmation if he ever got past that. It's a messy situation via harassment occurring on both sides, with careers and livelihoods being destroyed along the way. Two people fighting online, going to court, for arguing over a game about beating up a woman in response to a woman's intended video series on women being treated poorly in video games. Feels like the internet's own little circle of life, doesn't it? Number 2. We're now moving into what are easily the heaviest items on this list. If anything has made you squeamish or felt distasteful thus far, then I would say maybe these two are going to exceed your threshold. But if you've been watching the whole time thinking, what's the big deal about any of this, then maybe these last two will change your tune. This is actually a two-part story that will occupy both the number 2 and number 1 spots on the list, centering on a singular, callous, remorseless developer who tried not once but twice to capitalize on national tragedies.
At a moment, I shall break some laws.
At least at the time of this first one, the guy was a troll, creating these games
I did see, don't worry.
hoping to offend as many people as possible, and on the rare occasion he's agreed to interview, he blatantly baits the interviewers seeking to get further reactions. Perhaps he's changed his tune nowadays. I'm sure many of us regret choices we made in our early 20s, but rarely is that the consequence of something so seemingly hateful and vile. The first part of this story is VTech Rampage, which came from the 21-year-old amateur developer Ryan Jake Lamble, known on Newgrounds as Pete. VTech Rampage released in May 2007, just 1 month after the Virginia Tech shooting, which saw the deaths of 33 individuals, including the gunman.
The parents were sniping, a student was sniping, the deadliest active shooter in the system.
The game starts off with the shootings of Emily Hilscher and Ryan Clark, the first 2 victims in the real-life shooting. From there, you must make it safely across campus to barricade yourself.
Not really, not really Cameron. That's not Cameron. That's not Eligos's personality.
Obscenities, racial slurs, and other explicit material. Ryan has been on record describing himself as a heartless bastard who was perfectly content laughing at the hypocrisy of everyone and taking my title as Troll of the Year, and did it so me and my friends and people like me and my friends could have a laugh. The hypocrisy he is referring to was that everyone was outraged by his game, yet continued to share it, and
It honestly depends. Elagos could only... Though if it isn't already obvious, he hugs his family.
But I likely would have left it alone at the time because I did feel a lot of pressure to be free and open platform. There was a gradual slide towards me no longer feeling the responsibility to host everyone's stuff. It's a pressure that has plagued Tom for many years, knowing that Newgrounds was founded on controversial material like the Pico and Assassin series. In the years since, he has more readily taken down content that was explicitly made to offend or infuriate. You can still get away with a lot on Newgrounds, much more than YouTube, hence why it relies on its own Patreon-like donation system to remain afloat, as very few advertisers have remained willing.
Well, we don't exist, so that. Well, we don't exist in the like in this universe.
Subscription can either be $3 a month or $25 once a year. It makes the site entirely ad-free as well as a plethora of other bonuses. Considering the insane server costs of that site and the fact that it has remained committed to creators over advertisers means the site hasn't really been profitable for a lot of years, and I would recommend paying to support it to anyone who has ever or currently does frequent the site. I just feel I should do my part to make sure people are aware that that option's out there. While VTech Rampage has never been fully removed from Newgrounds, it was at one point in time threatened to be removed by the RIAA for the use of copyrighted music in the menu. This takedown notice was delivered to Newgrounds, with Tom then informing Pigpen of this development. Ryan uploaded a new version of the game with a replaced soundtrack and menu script. Honestly, in opposition to everything else scummy and vile this game and developer have done, this was a pretty genuinely funny middle finger to the RIAA. The game drew national attention, with New York Senator Andrew Lanza stating, "There are certain things in life you don't make light of and should not be turning into a game. It's not a game, it's a tremendous loss of life." And the Australian Minister of Communications, Senator Helen Coonan, planned to launch an official investigation stating, "The individual responsible for the game is using a terrible tragedy to draw attention to himself and his wife. It is in very poor taste, and the person concerned may want to consider getting some professional help." Ryan participated in an interview with the Sydney Morning Herald, sharing that he had sympathy for the victims and loved ones of the massacre, but that he was also sympathetic to the gunman. "No one listens to you unless you've got something sensational to do," he added, "and that's why I feel sympathy for Cho Sung-hee. He had to go that far." While that feels like this game maybe had something to say, VTech Rampage was criticized by Daniel Ledone, the developer of a 2005 RPG Maker title that recreated another mass shooting, Super Columbine Massacre RPG, which would have come just a few years earlier. While Danny's game drew the same criticisms as VTech Rampage for recreating a horrific real-world event, potentially trying to capitalize for personal gains, that one did actually receive praise for a strong narrative presenting the mental and emotional complexity of the gunman, its commentary on violence and video
Oh, little baby. Little baby.
VTech Rampage unfavorably, suggesting players to consider not whether a game about the Virginia Tech shooting should be made, but how we might go about making a game that accomplishes more than VTech Rampage does with the subject. Journalists at Blog Critics and Kotaku agreed with Ledone's assessment. The game is riddled with embarrassing typographical errors. The ridiculous screams that follow failure are beyond pathetic, and the choice of music is sure to cause copyright issues. It's a sad cry for attention and a miserable use of a tragedy in an attempt to
No,
fix that.
Koi though. Koi, on the other hand,
Anything more than shoddy, tacky gameplay to the table. Free speech and free expression are great. Just make sure you've got something to say. Through another interview, this for people, and is a subject that should not be taken lightly. It may feel that I've minimized other school shooting-based games like Pico's School for its absurdist and satirical nature, or even Kindergarten Killer for being an edgy product produced by a teenager that came before school shootings had reached an epidemic level across America. While it doesn't make those games immune to criticism, it does add some context as to why they weren't seen as immediately as tasteless as Lamborns were. Pico's School and Kindergarten Killer were not based on real events, only inspired by them, and an elementary school mass shooting like Sandy Hook had never been seen before, which dramatically recontextualizes the subject matter of those games. Unlike VTech Rampage, the slaying of Sandy Hook is presented with a surrealist style that lessens the visual impact of this recreation. However, it was still crafted to present the story as literally as possible, putting the player in the shoes of assailant Adam Lanza, playing out the exact events of him executing his mother that morning, traveling to school, then spending 10 minutes at the school, rampaging its halls, kicking in doors, shooting students, then ending with Adam's real-life suicide. The interesting thing is that while this game has been widely dismissed for its grisly subject matter and literal translation of those events, beating the game unlocks an alternate gun control mode. While it's certainly not a deep or nuanced bit of commentary, the game instead plays out with Adam's mother stabbed to death, failing to open her gun safe, and instead acting out the Sandy Hook rampage armed with a katana. At the time of this release in 2013, Lamborn reflected on his own views of gun regulations and how they compare between Australia and America.
I grew up in Houston, Texas, where I remember guns and ammunition being available, in unmanned sections of Walmart, and just it being commonplace to hear gunshots in the distance as I trudged upstate, which is a stark contrast
Koi.
to Sydney, Australia, where I moved to in 2001.
He even goes so far as to include links for people to educate themselves and to get in touch with various politicians in order to express their support for increased gun control. I'm from Canada and have seen similar benefits as he has in Australia to restricting access to firearms. I'll include links down below to do the same, and if anyone can suggest any other additional links and resources I can provide to maybe help have our voices be heard and our outcry against gun violence and school shootings, please do let me know. While discussing some of these titles with Tom Folk, he shared a personal take on Pigpen and this pair of shocking games. After VTech and Sandy Hook, people probably think Ryan's a prototypical far-right internet troll, but he's actually super liberal nowadays from what I've seen. When Sandy Hook came out and had the message about gun laws, I was sure that it was part of the troll, like the game was pretending to care about gun laws as a way to lives who speak out against it. Looking back now, I still think that might have been part of it, but I also think Pigpen was going through his own human evolution. We all do in our own way. While the game appears to have something to say on gun control and violence, it doesn't mean Ryan had suddenly become an equally empathetic person who could suddenly grasp the way his games may have negatively affected others. Shortly after the game's release, he picked a fight with Donna Soto on Twitter, the mother of Vicky Soto, who died in Sandy Hook trying to serve as a human shield to protect her students. Donna Soto shared, "It's absolutely disgusting that somebody thinks this is funny, and we're all
If the straw turns into a gun, it's over.
coming up on December. My daughter's birthday just passed. It just adds insult to the suffering that we're dealing with. It's just incomprehensible that someone would think this kind of thing is wanted. The decision for this game to be removed from Newgrounds was one site creator Tom Folk did not take lightly. Considering he himself created Pico's School and had never removed VTech Rampage from the Torture Game series, he made a post titled Censorship, which
No.
Closed it out with this statement.
Nah.
Newgrounds has faced harsh criticism in the past for standing firm on not censoring distasteful material, namely games about school shootings. All I can say is that this game is remarkable in terms of the age of the victims and the realism of the terror they faced. I was personally contacted by Sandy Hook parents, and they expressed their understanding of what the game was attempting to communicate, but also expressed the sadness and horror it made them feel, and their desire to have it moved. Today, I'm choosing respect for the Sandy Hook parents over respect for Newgrounds' censorship policies. Either decision on this matter puts a knot in my stomach. Ryan tweeted out the Tom fault following the takedown. I don't agree with your decision and can't be using Newgrounds again out of principle, but that couldn't possibly change my opinion of you, and I just want to make sure you know I don't hate you. I respect you, enjoy your work, and you've had a huge positive impact on me. Regardless of what Ryan wanted to say with his game, how his current views may have evolved, or his attempts to add artistic value, the slaying of Sandy Hook carried the baggage of the backlash he received for VTech Rampage, and still crossed a line that many were unable to support, and quite rightfully was taken down. So I find it almost inarguable that this pair of games have earned their place as the most controversial Flash games of all time. As I'm closing things out, I would hate for anyone's takeaway from this video to be that Newgrounds is a hellhole, harboring nothing but these detestable works. In Tom's own words, that is part of where the sense of responsibility came from. We were the first place to do real-time publishing, and it felt important not to gate. So while it is possible for these works to be shared on Newgrounds, it doesn't mean that they inherently support all things. And while there is still to this day plenty uploaded to that site that would not be at home on YouTube for a wide variety of reasons, most other sites would.
With that cancellation though, the game's franchise wouldn't see any new titles for years. That is until Windows. The developers moved on over to developing on Windows and changed the title of the game from New Chapter to Blood Covered. Edgy. In 2008, the game was again released episodically, and the Windows version of the game introduced a notion that will also be very relevant throughout the rest of the video. Voice acting. The PC version of the game introduced voice actors into the franchise, although they are not the voice actors you're all familiar with. Not yet. Devs aren't made of that much money, and the voice acting wasn't throughout the game, with the developers electing to have voice acting only be in important scenes. The PC version of Corpse Party is the version that most people may be familiar with, as that is the most accessible version of the game. The only problem with the PC version being that it is the most vanilla of the lot. The character sprites aren't the detailed ones that the franchise is known for just yet, and the school, which hadn't actually received a proper name yet, didn't look incredibly detailed. However, development of the Windows edition of Corpse Party ended up being halted by the publisher of the games, 5PB, who bought the rights to the game and sanctioned a release for the PSP, patching in Repeated Fear into the title of the game. CPBCRF was released in 2010, featuring all 5 chapters, and was released in the West in 2011 as just Corpse Party. This game is the definitive Corpse Party game, containing the groundwork for the entirety of the Corpse Party franchise, adding in multiple characters, fleshing out the school, and featuring the soundtrack that the franchise is all too known for, which I will get into later. This game was also the game that had the money poured into it, as 5PB took the original voice actors, sent them on their way, and replaced them with bigger industry names, with one of the most notable voice actors in the entire cast being the voice of Sachiko, who also voices Pikachu. So that makes the game infinitely funnier when you think of Pikachu brutally murdering several children in a haunted school because he's tired of being bossed around by his masters. Since the PSP version is the most important version of the game for this video, this is the part of the video where I have to cover the plot as fast as I can for those of you guys who are too scared to play the game, or you just want your memories jogged as to what happened. I played the 3DS version of the game, and you can watch footage of it on my Twitch channel, which will be linked in the description and will show up around here. So if you want the full experience, go there. But without further ado, the game begins with Ayumi telling a story to her fellow classmates, similar to the opening of the original PC-98 game. But immediately there's a major difference between versions, and it's not just that the game looks better, but there are more complete and utter strangers introduced to the cast that weren't there before. Yes, in this version of Corpse Party, several characters were patched in to flesh out the story and pad the game's runtime. Seiko Sachiko, who is Naomi's best friend and resident funny man of the group, Morishige, a wannabe stage actor who's incredibly reserved and cares for Mayu, pretty much the reason why everything in the game happens. It's our fault! And last but not least, the teacher, Miss Yui. After the scary story, news breaks that Mayu is leaving Kisaragi Academy. I forgot to mention that the school has a name now, and they kind of already knew Mayu was leaving, but you don't know this until the events of the second game. Mayu is about to escape everything that happens in the game, but Ayumi browsed one too many 4chan paranormal threads and conjures up an idea to make sure that the group stays friends forever. I mean, how the hell did no one just outright refuse to do it when she said she got this from the internet? The charm is called the Sachiko Ever After charm, and you have to repeat the sentence multiple times for every person in the room, or else you fall into the void. Someone doesn't do the charm right and they all fall into the void. But technically speaking, the source that Ayumi got the information about the charm from was lying for clicks on the internet, and they all fell for it, and now they're stuck in a haunted school named Heavenly Host, and they've all been separated and they've got to escape. There's the setup. I'll talk about the game again now. You start the game as Naomi and Seiko, and your job is pretty much to explore the school and learn more about the situation that you've landed yourselves in, and oh boy, it's not a good situation. A lot of the school seems to have missing chunks and is susceptible to earthquakes left, right and center. The major selling point of Corpse Party is just how expansive the game's environment is, especially compared to the original. Literally everything got a facelift, with the dark, miserable school atmosphere being what drove most people to the very detailed story. The biggest difference between CP/BCRF and CP98 is the fact that in this version of the game, instead of all the characters being stuck together and splitting up of their own accord, which is incredibly dumb, the game makes use of alternate dimensions to trap the main characters in, and build on one of the biggest things Corpse Party has to offer, and its psychological horror fueled by isolation. What the original game lacked was the atmosphere to sell such a horrifying story. It was essentially just a haunted mansion of jump scares. In CP/BCRF, the gloomy environment of Heavenly Host feels more real, especially because there's just so much ground to cover and so much to explore, and the game continuously beats you over the head with the notion that you are alone. There's no one coming to rescue you, most of the ghosts in the game want you dead, and there's zero hope of escape. All of this is highlighted the most in the very first chapter as a way to make sure you know just how screwed you are. Corpse Party is a very big fan of the notion of tell, don't show, but this actually works in their favor because the game does not shy away from gruesome descriptions of the fates of each of the characters in the game. As you explore the school more and more, you'll end up coming across multiple bodies on the Sometimes these bodies have notes with them written by the poor souls that had somehow found themselves in Heavenly Host, and the notes really try and mess with the morale of the protagonists of the game, focusing on psychological threats that come with being trapped in a miserable school for hours if not days on end, with the constant fear of vengeful spirits coming to murder you at any given point. Things such as characters feeling incredibly homesick and slowly starving from the lack of food. This is one of the strongest points of Corpse Party, the ability to have you care so much for each of the characters, as Kedman's writing focuses on the characterization of the main group, with backstories for all of them before, during and after their deaths. I haven't even talked about the deaths yet. One of the biggest selling points of Corpse Party is kind of in the name. You're partying with corpses, damn it! There are an imperial truck ton of deaths in this game. Some are completely avoidable and are a direct result of you being a bad gamer, such as letting yourself get caught by the ghosts, which is actually really hard to do. You have to be very, very bad in order to die that way. What's wrong with you? Other deaths, however, are completely unavoidable, and unlike the original Corpse Party game, killing any of the party members in your group doesn't warrant a game over. You gotta continue on without that party member and play towards the ending, because we're David Cage now. You ever played Heavy Rain? Ever heard of that old relic of a studio that goes by the name of Telltale Games? Each choice you make in Corpse Party, and mind you there aren't that many choices to make, it's not as fleshed out as the most cagey of David Cage games, but you better choose the right option or else you could land yourself a wrong end. Wrong ends are also a franchise staple for Corpse Party, and in most cases there are fully fleshed out endings based on something that you did in that chapter beforehand. Or maybe you did something that the game gave absolutely no hints that you were even supposed to do in the first place, leaving you confused as to how far back you need to track in order to make sure you're in the right path. Chapter 1.
I'm right here. You literally have your ADHD right there, guys. I don't need to talk that much.
Most of these wrong ends are a byproduct of forgetting to do something in the game. For example, in Chapter 1, in order to complete the level, you need to enter a specific classroom that requires a key that can be found in a completely random staircase. When you enter the classroom, you need to read the newspaper that's found inside. The game tries to take you for a schmuck and constantly ask you, do you really want to read the newspaper? Do you really want to? Do you? Your whole family could die if you read it. You just still want to read it, you maniac. Get fine. After reading through the newspaper, you just play through the rest of the chapter like you normally would, and you would get the true ending, which which involves Seiko hanging herself in the girls' bathroom stall. Or did she? If you don't read the newspaper and continue playing as normal, you get the same ending.
Good. Ah!
The three ghosts that are haunting the school materialize behind you and force you to swallow a pair of scissors. And this counts as a wrong end. Why? As the game progresses, you get more and more ways you can land your heroes in trouble and get
Dude,
them a
I'm
bad
just
ending.
here.
This mechanic is there to keep you on your feet and ensure that you search every nook and cranny that the game has to offer. Although you're not supposed to examine everything the game has to offer because that could land you in a bad end as well. Scattered around the school are victims' memoirs, the dying words of a character in the game. And even though the game warns you earlier not to read all the victims' memoirs, with the amount of bull the game's pulled on you thus far, you'd want to read all of them out of morbid curiosity. You read through all of them and things turn out fine and nothing happens. Just kidding! A cutscene is automatically triggered. Turns out you were the writer of the victim's memoir and now you're living through the nightmare that you have written for yourself. Wrong end, try again, bitch. No, but wait, you actually need to get all the wrong ends to 100% the game, so technically you should read all the victims' memoirs anyway! In the final chapter of the game, things get even worse when you can trigger a path to a wrong end extremely early on in the chapter, but you don't realize it until the very end of the chapter. Allowing Yuka to get caught by Yuya automatically triggers a wrong end that you won't know is a wrong end until a full hour and a half of gameplay, filled with many plot holes because the developers didn't have the foresight to write that much dialogue with one character missing. Trust me, I wouldn't write for that either, just keep the plot holes. Moving back to the story real quick, and I don't want to make this video a plot summary of all the games, so I'll make it brief. When you play through each of the characters, you gain control of a new group of people depending on which parallel universe they landed in. In chapter 1, you're with Naomi and Seiko. In chapter 2, you're with Yoshiki and Ayumi, with Miss Yui for about 3 seconds before she splits up and Kama serves her for not following the creepypasta code. In chapter 3, you're with Satoshi and Yuka and Morishige and Mayu. But this is a funny little chapter because you meet Naomi and Seiko's dead body, then get sent back into the dimension with Ayumi and Yoshiki away from Yuka. But then a chapter later, all of the paths start to converge and you're kinda all together at chapter 5, or at least the surviving members, to get through the rest of the story. Holy shit, I haven't even talked about what happened to some of the members. So basically, Seiko dies because she has an argument with Naomi, and then Naomi gets possessed by a thing called the Darkening, which is used as a plot device in the first game, but a game mechanic in the later games in the series. Anyway, the Darkening compels her to tie a noose around Seiko's neck and kill her dead. In chapter 2, Mayu talks to 2 of the ghosts that were trapped in Heavenly Host and feels a lot of empathy for them to the point that she wants to stay there forever. But then Ayumi and Yoshiki use the doll that you find earlier in the chapter to roast the shit out of the ghosts, and they don't take no shit from a bunch of school kids, so they grab Mayu and yeet her at a wall, causing her to explode into pieces. Later in the game, turns out Morishige has a borderline fetish with Guro as he's snapping up pictures of all the dead bodies around the school. Then he unknowingly takes a special interest in a very big gory patch on the wall. It's Mayu. And he goes batshit crazy and he dies, I think. In the final chapter, Miss Yui sacrifices herself to save Ayumi and falls down into a void and takes a lot of damage and dies. Then in the final chapter, it turns out that the person that was giving you hints throughout the game and Ayumi's idol is a pathological liar and manipulator. Who knew? Oops. So then you tell her exactly what she did and roast her so hard she vomits ink and dies again. And now you have to do the Sachiko ever after chamber actually properly, and you do it and make it out alive, but everyone who died in the school gets erased from existence. The end. In CPBCRF, this also marks the first game in which a new strand of virus has taken control over a few of the characters, which goes by the name of Corona Dumbass Syndrome, which is a very lethal virus that causes the people affected to make decisions that are so incredibly stupid, almost as stupid as running Cyberpunk on a PS3. Most of the incredibly dumb decisions are all the fault of Yuka and the writer's barely disguised fetish. You will notice in the Corpse Party franchise that a suspiciously large number of characters that just so happen to all be young girls tend to have an incessant need to want to use a lavatory, and the game manages to make almost an entire chapter about this plot point with Yuka. In the 3rd chapter of the game, she asks Satoshi to use the bathroom, and as you explore the school, you find that you cannot go in any of the stalls in the game. You'd expect Yuka to just say sod it and do it in the corner while Satoshi isn't looking, or in the empty bucket that you pass by multiple times throughout the game, but no! Yuka decides to hold it until they find a working toilet. Spoiler alert, they do not, and she decides to do it outside of the building. The same
Oh goddamn, I love Moon Sky.
When you pass by a specific
See you later.
area. This causes Satoshi and Yuka to get separated, and she is eventually stalked by one of the main antagonists of the franchise, Yuya Kizami, in one of the longest chase sequences in the entire game. And as mentioned before, if you get
Hello,
caught, you land
Seb.
yourself in a wrong end and she dies, all because she refused to just do it in a corner. Believe it or not, this isn't the first time this happens in the Corpse Party franchise, and it certainly will not be the last, as you'll soon find out. The gameplay in CPBCRF is pretty much almost identical to the original Corpse Party, but now the developers had the time and the money to work on the imperfections present in the first game. For example, none of the characters have magical powers anymore. Like, that's such a stupid decision to the story. Imagine the regular human characters even used much in the game at all. Every ghost counter in the game is an instant death if they catch you. The only time this is remotely relevant is in the first chapter in the infirmary, where Seiko leaves you alone to get attacked by a black sheep. Getting touched by this mist doesn't instantly kill you, but it drains your HP, and if you let your HP drop all the way down to 0, it triggers another wrong end. As well as the 3 ghosts that chase you, you are also chased by a former teacher in the school who's been killed and reanimated as a huge hulking zombie that wields nothing but a big hammer and a big mouth. The good thing about Corpse Party is that it gives you time and space to explore the school and the surrounding areas, giving you time to look at random dead bodies sprawled around the school, with them containing name tags that tell you the school they're from and their name, and sometimes having extra dialogue giving the player some information as to how they died. And this game loves to give victims the slow, agonizing deaths that they really don't deserve. What the hell, developer? CPBCRF got many releases throughout its lifetime, almost equaling FIFA and Skyrim with the amount of different versions for each console or device or anything that we can play the game on, being released in its alpha stages on PC first, then with patched and voice acting on the PSP, then finished on the PC after the PSP release, then ported on iOS in 2012, fixing a bunch of other things and patching one of the ghosts so it's more obvious what actually happened to her in Heavenly Host that caused half her head to be missing. In 2016, Nintendo wanted their mitts on the Corpse Party franchise. They felt cute and wanted to traumatize some kids, so Corpse Party was also released on the 3DS, with a back-to-school edition that I waited 2 whole months to arrive, and it never did. Thanks, DPD. The back-to-school edition contained figurines and an art book, and stands as the only way a Westerner could actually get a physical copy of Corpse Party. And right now, as it stands, the 3DS version of the game is the definitive way to play the game, with complete voice acting, fixed character sprites, Ayumi's hair was brown instead of blue on all versions of Corpse Party up until now, no idea how the developers overlooked this glaring mistake, but oh well, remastered music, and some more extra chapters that you could play for some more context to the Corpse Party lore. Until it took so long for me to work on this video that the developers announced yet another version of CPBCRF for the Nintendo Switch and the PS4 that will include updated sprites and voice acting for every extra chapter in the game as well. Can you guys see how much suffering I'm going through for this one video? Any new fan that wants to get acquainted with the Heavenly Host lore will definitely have to play this game first, as this is by far the most important game of the franchise and a very influential horror game that is up there with some of the greatest that the franchise has to offer, especially for gory horror. As for a game that had its roots in RPG Maker, it's extremely effective at unnerving the player, and it's probably one of the most well fleshed out games that the engine has to offer, with its humble beginnings in 1998 to present day being nothing short of inspiring for budding horror writers and developers around the world. But of course, with something this successful, it's ripe to be milked. And milked it was. If there's ever a proper case of sequelitis in the gaming industry,
unfortunately, no, I'm not on call with Ink at the moment. He's also taking a rest. The dude is sick.
But here we are. The first game got adapted into several manga adaptations, and they are all alternate versions of the first game and its many endings. The Blood Covered and the Book of Shadows manga are the most well-known adaptations of the source material, and are pretty solid retellings of the original game, with more character-to-character moments and a more streamlined story that doesn't rely on the game's meandering throughout its over 8-hour runtime. There's also another adaptation of the original game this time, named Musume, released in 2010, and it's well, it tries to mix the bare-bones plot of the original PC-98 game, which wasn't much to begin with the plot of its remake, and what comes out of it is an attempt to mix ecchi with the grisly murders that happened in the first game, which already is a major red flag. But then the final chapter makes things worse by turning into a hentai and including some really messed up endings to boot. Now, you'd think that this is some screwed up fanfiction and the developers of the original game wrote it off as a shameful smearing of their work, but then you check the writer of the manga and... On the moving picture side of things, an OVA of Corpse Party was released in 2013 titled Tortured Souls, and this was actually a lot of people's introduction to the Corpse Party franchise. If this was your introduction to this entire franchise, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to go into detail about the plot because I already did it when I covered the game, but the important part of the anime is that it tried to condense an almost 10-hour game full of many character interactions and lore into a 2-hour OVA. And because of this, the anime skips a lot of story that will leave you confused the more the episodes go on, with an okay opening episode focusing on Naomi and Seiko and their attempt to escape the school, with some fan service in between. As the series continues though, it neglects to mention a lot of the background information about the school and its rules, assuming the people who are watching the anime have already played the game. One thing that was really annoying as I watched the anime was that it really loved using the Dutch angle every time something scary was supposed to happen, which took me right out of the scares and made the anime much more fun to watch when I set up a viewing party of the entire OVA, and we ended up getting distracted and trying to guess in which direction the camera would rotate like we were watching Battlefield Earth. Since the anime has to blitz through the story and go through a more unique ending that actually isn't in any of the games, the deaths in the anime are also really funny, with the anime going the Musume route and including some fancy shots of our characters just as they're about to get brutally murdered, or straight up speedrunning their deaths like Ms. Yui. In the game she made a heroic sacrifice to save one of her students from falling to their death, whereas in the anime... The anime is a bit of a mess, but it's the easiest way to consume corpse party content without having to get too invested in the multitude of ports, remakes and remasters of the original game. Just don't expect anything mind-blowing and you'll have a much better time trying to watch it. The milking of the first game doesn't even end there, as in 2015 a live-action adaptation was made of Corpse Party, and instead of taking the cues from the game, they decided to use the anime as the adaptation.
Akuma could have chosen any tune in Toontown and she chose a tired rabbit.
With only an hour and a half, meaning that characters that are in all adaptations of the game aren't even in the film, and all the deaths in the film are extremely quick, which if anything is a mercy compared to what they have to deal with in the game. I would go into detail about the live-action film and its sequel, Book of Shadows, but I feel like that's worth another entire video as it is a doozy. It's actually insane how many adaptations of the original source material there are, and this all started from a game that didn't even get first place in the competition that it was submitted for. That is a flex and a half. Imagine making this empire of content and you ended up more successful than the person that initially beat you in the competition. Now, as I said a couple of minutes earlier, with the success of the first game, the franchise was bound to be milked, and it was milked to hell and back. Not just with the anime adaptations, but several sequels and spin-offs were made to the original game, the first of which being... Party, Book of Shadows was released internationally in 2013 for the PSP again, and things get a little easier from here on out, I hope. The entire premise of Book of Shadows makes this game seem more like a DLC than anything, similar to games such as Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare, which was an expansion to Red Dead Redemption. Book of Shadows essentially continues on from one of the endings from CPBCRF, in which during the final chapter of the game, if you choose not to read all 5 notes from Naho's notebook and continue the game as normal, the game ends as normal and you successfully do the charm to send you back home. Satoshi wakes up with no memory of going home after the events of the first game and heads to school, only to realize that everyone who died a gruesome, lonely death in the first game is alive and well, and everything is A-okay. Just kidding! Satoshi is in a Groundhog Day loop. He is the only one who knows what occurs in the first game, and they're about to do it all over again unless Satoshi can stop them from doing it. Spoiler alert, he doesn't, and they have to do it all over again. Honestly, if I was Satoshi, I just wouldn't have joined in. Let them deal with it themselves. Imagine trusting someone who gets their information from an occult blog online. So that I say, let them die. Anyways, the game is structured very weirdly compared to the other games in the series, acting like a complete visual novel and ditching the RPG elements that the Corpse Party franchise was known and loved for. In lieu of the RPG elements, Book of Shadows decides to become an old flash point-and-click adventure game, where the extent of the gameplay is just moving your mouse around the screen and hoping something happens when you click on something. The bulk of the game is pretty much a visual novel, and you don't even need to do anything for the majority of...
You know what? Sorry guys, I feel really tired today. I promise I'll be streaming tomorrow. I promise I'll be streaming tomorrow. I apologize. Sorry I didn't do that much art today. Oh shit, fuck. But yeah, yeah, tomorrow I'll probably stream longer. Hopefully. Anyways, I apologize. I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Bye guys.